Hey everyone, we're diving into some seriously fascinating stuff today. You guys know I love getting your source requests, and this one, wow, this is a deep dive and a half. We're talking about the secrets to success for some seriously impressive Gujarati entrepreneurs.
That's right. And we've got a ton of material to dig into. YouTube videos, Wikipedia articles, we're going all in.
Exactly. We're talking about going way beyond those surface level headlines, right?
hmm
We want to understand what really makes these business minds tick, what drives their success.
And we're going to break it all down for you.
All right. So one thing that grabbed me right away, and I think this was from the How Gujarati Became Rich video. It's this whole concept of like smart adaptation. They use this great example, Nirma washing powder.
Oh, yeah, Nirma. It's a classic example.
Right. Like everyone knows Nirma.
hmm
But the story behind it, that's where it gets really interesting. The founder, Karsanbhai Patel, he realized that most laundry detergents back then were way too expensive for a huge chunk of the population.
They were priced out. It's about understanding the market, right?
Totally. And instead of trying to, compete head to head with those big companies in an already crowded market, he's like, wait a minute, there's a huge opportunity here to serve this totally overlooked segment.
He absolutely nailed what we call the value proposition. It's not always about having the most high-tech, flashy product. Sometimes it's about providing a practical solution at a price point that makes sense for people, for your target market.
Exactly. And Patel, he just knocked it out of the park, right? He figured out how to make a quality detergent, but sell it at a fraction of the cost of the big brands. He directly addressed a need for, like, a massive customer base.
And that right there is often the recipe for success.
Yeah.
It actually reminds me of another example from that same video, the Balaji Wafers story. I mean, talk about humble beginnings. The founder, Shandu Varani, started out, get this, selling his homemade wafers in a movie theater.
I love that. You see a name like Balaji Wafers, this huge company now, and you'd never guess it started like that. But, this isn't just a story about luck, right? This is strategic thinking in action.
Oh, absolutely.
So as demand for his wafers starts to, like, explode, Virani makes a really bold move. He decides to invest in automated production. And keep in mind, this was back when all his competitors were still making their wafers by hand.
Talk about a smart move. That right there, that's a prime example of how being an early adopter of technology, it can give you a massive competitive edge. Varani understood that to keep up with that growing demand and, to outpace his rivals, he needed to boost production capacity. He was thinking way ahead.
He was playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, right? And it paid off big time.
Mm.
Balaji Wafers, they became a household name, a true testament to that kind of forward thinking. Now, this next point is super interesting. The same video, it talks about this incredible statistic about hotels and motels in the U.S. And this is where understanding the cultural context is so important.
Right, you're talking about the fact that a huge percentage, we're talking significant here, of hotels and motels in the U.S. are owned by Gujaratis. Many of them are from a specific community within Gujarat, one known for its entrepreneurial spirit, especially in the hospitality industry.
Yeah. It's amazing. But what's even more fascinating is how this all came to be. The video talks about this pivotal moment back in 1972 when Idi Amin expelled Gujaratis from Uganda. It was a tragedy, obviously, but it also really speaks to the resilience of this community.
It really does. I mean, out of this incredibly difficult, challenging situation, you see this story of support, of solidarity emerge.
Absolutely. So Gujaratis in the U.S., especially those who are already in the motel business, they really stepped up to help those who had been displaced from Uganda. They offered financial assistance, shared their business knowledge, even encouraged them to get into the market with this really simple but powerful message. If you are a Patel, lease a hotel.
Patel, of course, being a common surname in that particular Gujarati community.
Exactly. And, that saying, it just became synonymous with success in the U.S. hotel industry.
That's a perfect illustration of the power of community support, of shared knowledge, especially for people who are navigating a new business landscape. It's like having a built-in network to lean on, to learn from, to get encouragement from. It's like a collective launching pad for success.
It's like success breeding more success. But let's switch gears for a second and talk about risk. This is a theme that we see popping up again and again in these sources, wouldn't you say?
Without a doubt. Taking calculated risks is practically a non-negotiable when it comes to successful entrepreneurship. And the How Gujarati Became Rich video does a great job of highlighting this with these really compelling examples.
Totally.
They talk about Lakshmi Mittal, right? He saw this potential in a struggling steel plant in Mexico. a venture that, frankly, many people considered a lost cause.
Everyone's like, stay away. But Middle, he saw something that others missed.
He wasn't afraid to make a bold move. But here's the key. It wasn't just about taking a gamble.
Right, exactly. This is where that calculated part comes in.
Exactly. Metal didn't just throw money at the problem hoping for the best. He really thought it through. He assessed the potential downsides, and he realized that even if the plant totally failed, he could likely recover his investment by selling off the assets.
A calculated gamble, and boy did it pay off for him. He turned that struggling steel plant around, and it became incredibly profitable. And then there's the story of Dilip Shanghvi, the founder of Sun Pharma. He took a very different approach to risk, especially when he set his sights on breaking into the U.S. pharmaceutical market.
Shagby, he's a masterclass in patience, long-term thinking, and something we call horizontal integration. Instead of starting a brand new pharma company in the U.S., which is expensive and incredibly complex, he strategically acquired a struggling American company in stages.
Wow, so strategic.
Right.
What a savvy move.
By doing that, he bypassed so many of the typical hurdles involved in, trying to break into a new market. Plus, it allowed him to integrate his existing operations gradually, leveraging that acquired company's infrastructure, their market presence.
Yeah.
It's smart.
It's like if you're trying to learn how to get around a new city, you don't just start driving randomly. It's much easier if you first understand the existing roads, the landmarks, right? It minimizes your risk and it maximizes your chances of getting where you want to go.
Exactly. And it's much less likely you'll end up completely lost.
Right. Okay, so both Middle and Shengvi, they're willing to make these daring moves, but those moves were always carefully considered. They both had a keen eye on the potential rewards, but also on the potential downsides, right?
Exactly. And that distinction is crucial. It's not about being reckless, it's about strategic risk assessment.
Yeah.
But speaking of strategic thinking, we have to talk about Mukesh Ambani.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a guy who understands how to anticipate future trends.
Oh, absolutely. He sees the bigger picture like nobody else.
He really does.
We watched those YouTube videos, especially the Mukesh Ambani. And that richest Indian Mukesh Ambani house, who are ICH. They both highlight his big bet on 4G technology. And it's a perfect example of what we're talking about. I mean, picture this. Everyone's going crazy over 3G, right? But Ambani, he's already looking ahead. He's seeing where things are going.
And he's not afraid to take action, even if it seems, a little out there at the time. He invested a ton in building out a 4G network when most people didn't even really get what that meant.
Such a gutsy move. Everyone else is zigging, he's zagging.
And it paid off.
Oh, in a big way. But it wasn't just about being first, right? It was about understanding that this technology, it had the potential to be a game changer.
Absolutely. He recognized the future potential of high-speed mobile data.
Mm-hmm.
While everyone else hesitated, he jumped on the opportunity, becoming a first mover in a rapidly evolving market. And, let's not forget his strategic pricing, right?
Yeah.
Offering those crazy low-cost data plans, it was revolutionary.
He basically made the internet accessible to millions of Indians. That's huge. So we've got these recurring themes, right? Adaptation, strategic thinking, calculated risk-taking. But there's another layer to this, something a little more complex that emerges from the sources.
Right, you're talking about that intersection of business with power dynamics and that art of really building strategic relationships. We see it with Dhirubhai Ambani, Mukesh's father, and with Mukesh himself.
It's like this theme that keeps coming up in all these different sources, right? From the Mukesh Ambani videos to his Wikipedia article, it seems like knowing the right people, mastering that art of negotiation, it played a key role in Reliance's growth, even way back with Dhirubhai.
For sure. And what the sources suggest is that there's a pattern here of cultivating and leveraging these really important relationships, connecting with these key players, and it's been really instrumental in navigating the often very complex Indian business landscape.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And it seems like Mukesh Ambani has taken a page from his father's playbook. He clearly understands how to work those intricate networks, how to build alliances that benefit his businesses.
It really emphasizes the importance of understanding the dynamics of power and influence, especially in an economy like India's that's growing so rapidly. And it reminds us that sometimes business success, especially on a large scale, is as much about skillfully navigating those complex systems, those relationships, as it is about innovative products or services.
Right. It's like that old saying, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. But it does make you wonder about fairness and equal opportunity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of critical thinking when we evaluate these stories of, what looks like extraordinary success.
Mm.
We have to look beyond the surface, ask those tough questions.
Mm.
How did these individuals create these connections? What were the implications of their strategies, within a larger societal context? And are there other paths to success that don't rely on navigating these, sometimes complicated power structures?
It's about understanding the full context, the nuances, and really the ethical considerations at play when we talk about leveraging relationships for business success.
Because at the end of the day, true success, it should encompass not just financial gain, but also integrity, responsibility, a commitment to fairness.
Right, so that leads us to a really important question.
Right.
What are the values that are underpinning these success stories?
Exactly. Are there potential downsides to some of these strategies? Are there different ways, alternative paths to building a thriving business while still upholding those ethical principles? I think these are questions worth considering,
Definitely some food for thought.
without a doubt. We have to remember that success, it's not a one-size-fits-all concept. It's often much more nuanced and multifaceted than it might appear on the surface. One thing about success, something people don't always talk about, is that ability to control the narrative. How people see you, how they see your brand. It's all part of it.
Oh, that's such a good point. And it really hit me when we were looking at Mukesh Ambani. It's like that richest Indian Mukesh Ambani, how so air UCH video. It just made it so obvious. That guy, he's strategic about managing his image, like to the nth degree.
He's got it down to a science, that's for sure. I think he's learned a lot from watching his father, both the good and the bad, the triumphs, the controversies. He seems really intent on controlling what information gets out there about him, about Reliance Industries.
You can see it in how Reliance went after Network 18, that whole acquisition. I mean, that gave them huge influence over the media. And then you've got that whole thing with Dhirubhai Ambani, how he went after that book that was, not so flattering. He took legal action.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't messing around. It shows you how important it is to them to shape the narrative.
It's a good reminder that being successful in business, it's not just about what you achieve. It's also about how you present those achievements, to the world. It's about understanding the power of your story, how you tell it, the media, PR, all of that.
It makes you think, doesn't it? We see this incredible drive, these entrepreneurs who just seem to spot opportunities everywhere and build these empires. But at the same time, there's this awareness that influence matters, connections matter, controlling the message. It all matters.
It's all connected, right? It's a web. And that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, We're not just crunching numbers here, looking at profits and losses. We're digging into these strategies, the relationships, the calculated risks, all the things that got these Gujarati entrepreneurs to the top.
Totally. It's like we're getting a glimpse behind the curtain, right? We see the human side of things, and that's where the real learning happens.
100%. And sometimes those insights, they challenge how we think about success. They make us question those stories we tell ourselves, make us consider the ethics of how things are done.
It's so true. It's not enough to just look at someone successful and say, oh, wow, good for them. We've got to engage with it, think critically about it. How did they get there? Why did they make the choices they made? What was the impact,
Exactly. Because business is never just business, right?
Yeah.
It's tied up with everything else, social structures, power dynamics, ethical questions. It's all intertwined.
And like we've seen with these Gujarati entrepreneurs, it's this balancing act. You see this incredible ambition, this drive to innovate, to build. But you also see how much they value community, relationships, and navigating these complex systems.
It makes you wonder, for anyone who wants to achieve that kind of success, what's the takeaway? What can we learn from these stories? And how do we apply it in a way that, feels authentic to us, aligns with our values, our goals?
It's such a good question, right? Because there's no magic formula here. What works for one person may not work for another.
Exactly. It's about finding that approach that plays to your strengths, that aligns with what you believe in, what you see for your future.
It's about being adaptable, being strategic, knowing when to take a chance. But it's also about, being aware of the impact of your actions, how they affect the people around you, the world around you.
I think that's so important. True success, it should be about more than just what you achieve for yourself. It should be about making a positive difference, leaving things better than you found them.
I love that. It's not just about reaching the finish line, it's about how you run the race. It's about building something you're proud of, something that reflects who you are, what you believe in, and making the world a better place while you're at it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive, haven't we?
We really have. We've gone deep on these strategies, the mindsets, the cultural influences, all those things that have shaped the success of these incredible Gujarati entrepreneurs.
We've looked at how they approach risk, their incredible networking skills, how they adapt and thrive in a world that's constantly changing. It's pretty impressive.
Totally. But like with any good deep dive, we've also uncovered some big questions, right? Things to ponder. Like, what's the relationship between business and power? How important are ethical considerations really? Are there downsides to some of these strategies?
And those questions, I think, are just as important as any answers we might find.
Well, for sure, because they make us think, don't they? They challenge us to question what we think we know and to look at success in a more nuanced, complete way.
It's not about blindly following someone else's playbook, right? It's about writing your own, but doing it in a way that reflects your values, your desire to have a positive impact.
It's like we could do a whole other deep dive just on those questions. But that's what makes this so fascinating, right? We've gone beyond just like rah-rah success. We really peeled back the layers, looked at the stuff that doesn't always make the headlines.
Exactly. And I think it highlights something really important that, achieving success, especially on a big scale, it's rarely a simple, straightforward journey. There are always going to be twists and turns, tough calls to make, times when you have to go against the grain.
And sometimes you have to ruffle some feathers along the way. But what's inspiring about these Gujarati entrepreneurs, it's that resilience, that ability to adapt and overcome.
Absolutely. They see opportunity where others see obstacles.
Sure.
And they're not afraid to really go for it. And I think that's a powerful lesson for all of us, no matter what field we're in or what we're striving to achieve.
Totally. It's like we've been given this backstage pass, right? We've gotten to see firsthand how these entrepreneurs think, how they operate, what makes them tick.
And we've seen the good, the bad, the strategic brilliance, and, those gray areas where the lines can get a little blurry.
For sure. But that's real life, right? Business, it's not always black and white. There are going to be trade-offs, ethical dilemmas, situations where there's no easy answer.
And it's in those moments, I think, that our values really come into play. Because at the end of the day, it all comes back to who we want to be, what kind of legacy we want to leave behind.
It's not just about the bottom line, it's about building something meaningful, something that makes a difference in the world, and doing it in a way that you can be proud of.
100%. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Gujarati business success, I want to leave you with this thought. What will your entrepreneurial journey look like? What impact do you want to have?
Those are the big questions. And remember, there's no one right answer. Your path is yours to create.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to forge your own way, to challenge the status quo, and to define success on your own terms.
I love it. It's your story to write. So until next time, keep asking those big questions, keep diving deep, and keep reaching for those big, audacious goals.